Welcome everyone to Antwerp Management School. Today we open minds once again to create impact in the world. And impact is exactly what we need in the world of supply chain. Because trade wars, pandemics, energy disruptions, climate goals, geopolitical shocks, the chain is cracking and sometimes it breaks. Today, we go beyond the headlines. We offer insights, reflection, and concrete strategies to help your organization become more agile and resilient. And we do this today with Roel Gevaers, who is Academic Director of the Master in Global Supply Chain Management at AMS, with Gergely Sorczyk, Director Global Logistics, Sourcing and Sustainability at Zoetis Belgium and board member of Pharma.aero, a seasoned practitioner with global experience, and Wouter de Wulf, Academic Director of the Master Maritime and Air Transport Management at AMS. Welcome all three. Let's start with you, Sergey. What is Zoetis? Could you give us just a short introduction?
Of course. Zoetis is an American drug company, the largest producers of medicines and vaccinations for pets and livestock. We are in a stock exchange, separated from Pfizer Animal Health over 13 years ago, and became an independent company. And I'm working for the Belgium office.
Okay, and how long have you been working in global supply chain?
For Zoetis, I'm working over 10 years. Currently, I'm working for global logistics, sourcing and sustainability, but previously I did over 10 years warehousing in Hungary, and then within Zoetis, global transportation, only pharmaceutical.
So you know a lot about the topic. All three, of course. But before we jump into the conversation, let me say that this is an interactive webinar, so we need your questions and your challenges as well. Drop them in the chat and we will tackle them throughout the webinar and take our time as well at the end of the webinar during the Q&A section. So first, let's set the bigger picture. Roel, I'll start with you. In your view, what's the most important geopolitical and economic trends that are currently influencing the global supply chain?
Well, already for 5 years now, supply chains are a bit under pressure. But if you look nowadays, there are tariffs all over the place. And not only tariffs, but if you look around in the world, there are multiple wars or war tensions in Asia, Panama area where there is pressure. So it's about tariffs, war and uncertainty these days.
Okay, these are the topics we're going to tackle. Wouter, could you add something?
No, I just see that it has an enormous impact on the supply chain, because when I was studying at the University of Antwerp in the 90s, and I was saying, oh, you need to outsource and you need to buy. You can't do things yourself. Just make sure you outsource things to countries where they can do things cheaper and better. And that led to enormous long supply chains. And now, of course, you see the impact of what Roel has just said.
Yeah, but does this mean then that traditional lean supply chain is becoming obsolete or too risky in these environments?
Well, indeed, if you look back, I mean, it was for years the tradition, go for just-in-time, outsource, offshore, like you call it, long supply chains, but you were always certain I order something in the Far East and it arrives exactly on time when I want it, how I want it, in the quantities I want it. That's not anymore the case today. So, and another thing which is also a misconception is that supply chains in the old days were considered as purely cost centers, a back office, and they need to make it happen, no strategic behavior. Of course, today, all companies, or I hope at least most companies, should acknowledge that supply chain should be at strategic level and not just a cost center.
Yeah, it's also the practice at Zoetis.
I agree. I think during COVID, a lot of things changed. How people are seeing transportation and logistic, or position is more strategic nowadays than before. I agree, just-in-time logistic, what I also studied 20 years ago, it's totally changed. We also need to have reliable stock on hand to manage every disruptions and every changes what we have. And to be honest, since COVID, it seems like a never-ending story, because we're always happening something, as Roel just mentioned. Currently, the tariff, which is a big impact for everyone. And I'm very curious how we see that But there's, from my side, a fear that once we have a green light and they have a deal and everybody will start to ship again, there will be a tremendous demand. So we will see again shortages. We will see again difficulties to book planes, to book space, to get containers, and prices will skyrocket again. We saw that in COVID, then the prices went to the peak even 7 times or 9 times higher than the normal circumstances, which is cooled down. But regarding some predictions, we are expecting 50% increase, but I think we will be much more over that. So we need to be sure that we have every knowledge and every practicing what we learned and what we had to survive these and adopt these days.
Yeah, so the bigger picture is really supply chain nowadays differs from 5 years ago. It's really into strategic insights, strategic department within an organization. And I'm guessing it is at Zoetis. How has the internal perception of supply chain changed over the years at your company?
Indeed, flexibility. We need to adapt, especially pharmaceutical companies. We are in general more old-fashioned, less technology we used versus the FMCG or other industries, electronics. What we learned and what we realized as well, that more and more visibility is necessary. So Zoetis is heavily investing the technology, using full visibilities for end-to-end visibilities, also more resilient, more flexible with our supply chain and our outsourcing strategy as well, as it was mentioned. And also implementing AI and other tools which are helping us to make the best decisions and also adapt the changes faster.
Yeah, so the importance in the field is very obvious. Has it also changed at Antwerp Management School?
Of course, in our lectures, and I can speak for the Global Supply Chain Master, colleague Wouter, I can say that immediately for the Maritime and Air Master, but we adapt all our courses immediately, taking into account forecasting in a certain way. We adapt it to newest technologies, but today with the uncertainty, even forecasting is not easy, but we all use these examples like the tariffs, like the wars. We implement high levels of geopolitical knowledge and how to translate it into business strategies. We take that in all our courses from global supply chain management.
Because you as academic directors, you need to be agile then as well.
Of course, but we've seen the environment has been pretty stable, between 2000 and 2020, and you have all these theories indeed of offshoring and warehouse optimization. And if you look at the transport chains by maritime and air and road, which are quite pretty stable. So you could really do calculations and you could give this typical warehousing optimization theories and so on. Nowadays, you can see things have changed, and it's not only about minimizing your inventory and minimizing your cost and be as efficient as possible. Nowadays, you need to look, given all this geopolitical situation, you need to look at alternatives and a plan A and a plan B and a plan C. So yes, we also have the topic now, geopolitics, in our courses, which is something fairly new in the supply chain environment. And students love it actually, but we have to adapt the slides almost every week nowadays.
Yeah. Yes. We saw it in the introductory movie. It's very relevant and very up to speed. Now, Wouter, how do the international tensions, we saw war in Ukraine, the trade war between the US and China, how do these tensions then affect the global supply chain and also the position of BDO as a transit country?
Yeah, of course, it affects the supply chains enormously, isn't it? I mean, if you calculate, for instance, you say, on average, we have 40 days for shipping a container between China and Europe, or the port of Antwerp, and certainly the Houthis are blocking the Suez Canal, so you have to make the detour. It takes another 15 days. The cost is also rising. You have less ships, so the cost is rising even more. So this absolutely disrupts your calculation of the optimal stock. The same with certain air routes. You cannot fly over Russia Russia anymore. At least the Western companies cannot fly over Russia, which means it's much more expensive if you have to make another tour. Prices are going up to a certain aspect. So all the parameters in your formulas, which we were using before, are not valid anymore. Come back to Belgium. Of course, Belgium still has a fantastic geographical location. If you look at it, we're in the middle of the blue banana, where the majority of the people live and the highest GDP per capita is made. So we're still quite well positioned. That is for sure. You see, even the port of Antwerp and Brussels Airport, Liège Airport, they're doing quite well. If you look at the number of distribution centers which are set up in Belgium, of course we have some labor discussion and all of that, but you still see that Belgium is quite hot as a logistical hotspot. For the moment, there are no real impacts yet, but of course, what's happening now, certain companies might reconsider their strategy and might go for a regional distribution. But that's, I think my colleague Roel can probably talk a bit more about that. But that's one of the dangers. But for the moment, we're good. The geographical location is good. Our infrastructure is absolutely top notch. We have some very, very good players here. So we are well positioned. But we have to take care of what's going on around us, not only outside Europe, but also inside Europe.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I would like to add there is indeed we are well positioned. We have the infrastructure. We are here in the area where ports, airports, logistics infrastructure is everywhere. But in what you see happening now is that if we want to stay at that position, like top location in supply chain and logistics, you need to have everybody involved there. For example, one of the points related to tariffs, which will be a pain point or something which we all should be aware of, is, for example, how will customs react on all those tariffs? Because I mean, there is a lot of discussion about e-commerce shipments from Asia to Europe, from Asia to US, but they all need to be checked by customs. That will be something also from data point of view, from supply chain knowledge point of view, something where we should be also aware of how to take all those stakeholders into account in one big ecosystem. And that's the whole thing. If we want to be still on top position supply chain, we need to have that all ecosystem view. And that's also something we take here in our lectures into account.
Yeah. And the ecosystem also exists at Zoetis,
I just wanted to mention that, we are in a very unique and good position in Belgium because of the Brussels airport and the Antwerp port. They're continuously investing, specifically investing for pharmaceuticals. So the infrastructure is really good. We are consolidating export from here, from other countries as well, to shipping and export from Belgium, and also our gateway for import in Europe. So we are using Belgium as a main hub for us, which is really good because it's very reliable service and very good connections.
And do we dare to make any predictions for the future for Belgium, or that's too difficult?
Of course, we still have our infrastructure, and we see, of course, the licenses sometimes are topping off. Look at Brussels Airport and Liège Airport. They have a new license which restricts the number of movements. We have, of course, the Port of Antwerp, where capacity is getting limited. We have taken up most of the space. We just have one potential dock. So infrastructure-wise, we might end up touch the limits. Same with labor. We need skilled labor. We also need, let's say, the infrastructure to grow. So that might be an issue later on.
But we also see that they're investing for digitalization, which could be also a big advantage in the future. And if they go more automatization as well, we see that China 24/7 working automated services, which is not typical in Europe or even in the US. If that's the future or that's the direction, it will be again help to give some boost.
And in Belgium we have we have multiple, but there is one specific thing that's also sometimes forgotten in supply chains. It's about, in a certain way, also some flexibility and agility and resilience. One of the advantages of Belgium is that you have here the system of technical unemployment, where you still have people in your company, and many of our neighboring countries have sometimes difficulties when you have a certain dip in your volumes to pick up later. That's what we saw in the 2020, 2021, and you saw that Belgium was there more stable in the months afterwards.
Yeah, true.
But we see, of course, these assets we were just mentioning, our neighboring countries, the north of France, also the Netherlands, they have very similar assets. If you look at the Netherlands, for instance, they have Schiphol, they have the port of Rotterdam, they have a bit of a lower labor cost, but indeed they don't have this flexible temporary unemployment. So we really have to be on top of it to make sure that we are still on top of the logistical index.
Food chain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you are an expert, Walter, in port economics and air freight. How do they influence each other in times of crisis?
Yeah, of course, there are two different tracks. Most of the time, you see that the cheaper and non-urgent goods are shipped, which is by far the cheapest way to ship things, but very, very slow. On the other side, air freight is very, very fast, but also very, very expensive. So you see in the past, they always kept each other in kind of equilibrium. Some urgent things, some high capital goods were just sent by air. And there was a certain equilibrium during Corona, but also in the aftermath. You see that air freight often came to the rescue because they urgently need parts, for instance, from Taiwan or from other places where they urgently need these spare parts, not only for pharmaceuticals, but also for the automobile industry, for the technology. So it's good we have both modes. It's also good in Belgium and in Flanders we have both modes very, very close by. From sustainability point of view, as we discussed before, of course, maritime transport is significantly, let's say, more sustainable. But on the other side, it's also much cheaper, but much slower. So you see this kind of interaction happens all the time. And being agile and being flexible to do plug in and plug out both transport modes when you need it, that will be one of the key success factors in the future for companies.
Yeah, is agility also the key factor for companies to keep in mind if they want to change and shift their mindset in this new normal? Is that the key word, agility? Flexibility?
Adaptability?
Yeah, it is. Agility, resilience, I mean, if you go back, what was said between 2000 to 2020, the standard was in many cases, if you want to have a really lean and efficient and very cheap supply chain, take one big supplier with a lot of volume discounts. You have one contract with a big supply chain logistics company, and that's the easiest and cheapest way you can do. But of course, that is not applicable anymore today, because if you have multiple bottlenecks in the supply chain, at a certain moment it will break down. So now it's about using at certain moments air freight, in certain moment maritime freight, and indeed, like Wouter says, in most cases a specific product is a bit more air or maritime. But some years ago, for example, McDonald's was shipping fries from Belgium to Japan because there was an issue. The fries were blocked in a container vessel. So they flew in just Belgium potato fries to Japan, because McDonald's without fries, I mean, that's your SLA. So, and then the agility to switch within these things with multiple suppliers, that's the way to go, resilience and agility.
Yeah.
Yes.
Single source, that's absolutely the old world, that is clear, and only do offshoring that as well. You can clearly see these two old tracks which we have been teaching, let's be honest, the last 20 years, between 2000 and 2020, that's finished now.
Yeah, and I'm guessing people watching this would be thinking, is my company agile enough? Is there a way to measure this? How would we ease their mind about their agility?
I'm sure they have seen it when there were issues. If they certainly didn't have stock or they couldn't supply, I'm sure that they have experienced it themselves. They were agile or not. And you see it, the boardrooms this time nowadays, reshoring, onshoring. That's one of the board talks everywhere. Having multiple plants. Even a number of pharmaceutical companies are even looking, how can I invest in other countries to make sure that I do not put all my eggs in one basket. So yes, they have seen it, they have experienced it, and I'm sure it's on the board level.
It's so it is as well.
I mean, if you can sell and you keep the market running, and also the manufacturing sides, because we also talk about that just before, that one of the most important for a manufacturer like us is always to have enough raw material to keep the manufacturing running, and also to serve the market with the necessary product, right? But you can still survive not to ship one countries or ship less to one countries, but not to manufacturers. That's the most critical part. So what we see, if you can still sell, even if within COVID, because Redis has great partners and we were able to ship all of the countries, we were able to gain market shares. So I think it's very important that you adapt to the changes and you work with the partners. You are able to serve your needs, and you will always figure out something. We use different airports. First time during COVID, we started to charter airplanes to ship to China, for example. And I think these days, as the tariff will ease, will come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, already.
You can clearly see that's a bit what you said as well, Rule, is that, I mean, if you have a strong supply chain department that can be agile and flexible, it can become an asset because you can keep the business going, as you were saying, and then you can grow your market share.
Yeah, and that's a strategic part. It's no longer a cost department, but it really pays off.
Absolutely, and there it is indeed at a certain moment what is the power of a supply chain department in the whole game. I mean, to build a bit further on what you said, I mean, a measuring point today could be, I mean, how quick can you switch from a certain supplier to another supplier or adding a supplier? I mean, 5-6 years ago, I know supply chain and shipping companies where it would take 1 to 1.5 years to introduce a new supplier from cybersecurity point of view, integration in the existing IT systems. 1.5 years, that's ages in supply chain. And there it is, I mean, the quicker you can switch with taking everything into account, the more power you have as a supply chain excellence or managerial behavior, the more agile and resilient you might be able to show to the company.
And you have the knowledge in your own company as well, not to rely on outsourcing.
Absolutely. That's very important, that you need to have internal knowledge. You can has an expertise, and you can help and drive your suppliers, your freight forwarders, how to do and how to adapt. So you can work together, and you're not only rely on them. But I agree. And pharmaceuticals, it's even more difficult because we need to audit them. We need to go through all the processes. So change, and what we are doing as well, that we are using multiple carriers, and we change between the carriers. So one of the issues what we had during COVID, that we were not able to serve with a carrier, it's much easier to change with an existing carrier. So you already have a contract, you already got a quality agreement, everything in place, it was audited. So it's much easier to change between your current carriers than to find a new one from the market.
Yeah, okay. Already good examples. And it ignited already some questions from the audience. Let's read them on the screen together. The first one is, in a world of constant changes, controlling reliability of shipping needs more visibility. Is there any tool to visualize these performance for different shipping lines for a specific route to know what are the most reliable ones? Same for detecting ports and congestions when they happen to take relevant actions like rerouting or others. It's a very elaborate question. Who feels called to answer?
I can start maybe. Yeah. It's a Cordon Traveler ecosystem. So there's two elements there are a lot of tools, visibility tools, where you can have end-to-end visibility, your own product, where is its exact location. If there is any change, you can still interrupt, or you can have your temperature monitoring, where you can online see what the temperature is, so you can act if there is something happening. But also in general, and that's what we talked about just recently, the expertise. It's good if you know which port behaving how, what's their capabilities. We change airline because of the handling agent. So you need to know every element, not just your freight forwarder, but your airport capabilities, your airline capabilities, your handling agent capabilities. And based on that and their performance, you change or you keep or you educate them. So it's very important to have a full visibility about who's performing, what's their KPI, how flexible they are.
And does there exist like a tool or common tools that are used?
Visibility tool, yes, they are exist, but we're also measuring the performance of the airlines based on temperature excursions, based on arrival accuracy. We're checking if there is any mistake. Is it because of them or the handling agent? So yeah, there is.
See it as like monitoring screens that are active all through
We
the
don't
day?
do that typical type of control towers, but if
we do actually,
yeah, some of the companies do.
Yeah.
But if there is a need, or we want to jump in, or we get a report, or we can get an alert, that's a possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. In our courses, for example, if we speak about, it's not only forecasting, but like having the whole view on it, you see more and more companies that are really implementing what you call even command towers. And that's really like a bit like a control tower from an airport, but then from a company, with sometimes video walls of 20 meters long, with all kind of screens. Indication of in that area of the world there is risk. We have a container in that area which might be delayed with 2-3 days. It goes very far these days. Even one of my executive PhD students here from Antwerp Management School is exactly working on that one, combining visuals in supply chains with risk management and how to take that into control in command centers and decisions.
Nice.
Yes,
It's definitely a mindset shift, isn't it? Because again, in the past they were saying, "Oh, you need to outsource these things. I can give it to the forwarder, and he or she will take care of it, and we'll be fine. And just keep me informed when there's an issue." Nowadays, many companies are saying, "Oh my God, this is absolutely crucial. I need to have control, or even more. I want to be in command in a way." And they want to travel 2, 3, even sometimes 4 levels down up to the handling agent of the shipping line in a certain port. You want to know what the performance is. So it's an interesting time.
Yeah. So still room for, or you need to have a large room with all the screens then.
Yeah, and also the technology is evolving. So all these things are started a few years ago, but now with the AI, there's a lot of production because they're using historical data and they predicted, okay, if this is how it goes, based on all the historical data and the element, this is how we're going to end.
Yeah, is AI also integrated in the courses that you provide within Antwerp Management School that also has changed the landscape, I'm guessing, for supply chain?
GPT,
That's for sure.
Using it, of course.
But of course, for example, in global supply chain management, next year we will have, starting from September, we will have a brand new curriculum, and there will be a course Supply Chain 4.0. Taught by 2 MIT professors, by the way, specifically about that kind of things, that kind of knowledge, combining AI forecasting, machine learning, data, and decision making in supply chains.
Really advanced in your course.
I also have a course about digitization, innovation. Of course, AI is into it, and that professor also has to change his slides every time because this technology is evolving so fast. Yeah.
I see another question. It's with the current disruptions like wars, tariff changes, etc. Some manufacturers decided to localize their manufacturing. Will this cause any threats to the global economy and supply chain, like cost increase, job security, etc.? Do you think this movement will continue in the future?
It's not only localized, isn't it? Very often they were looking for a plan B, which is called reshoring, bring it back to your own country, or nearshoring, bring it to a country close by. You also do not so easy plug in and plug out. It takes years to set up a new manufacturing plant. That's what Trump will see now, is that you can have tariffs, but by the time you have, if these plants would move, it takes years before they're fully operational. But you do see, of course, that having a plan B and a plan C results in cost increase. It's closer by, but very often, for instance, Morocco or Turkey, they're cheaper than Europe in manufacturing, but definitely more expensive than China. So yes, there are cost increases. Also, the supply chain gets more complicated. And as Rob was saying before, it's not only being efficient, it is also effective nowadays. So yes, and job security, we see how that's going on, but there definitely will be cost increases.
Yeah. Do you see this as well at Zoetis?
For manufacturing, it's also very difficult to change in pharmaceuticals because it's minimum 5 years to build and also get the licenses, the registration and everything. But I think it would be very early to change anything because of the tariff. We see that it's still under negotiation, and the cost and labor differences between Asia and Europe and the US is significant. So it's also a huge risk if you change and get it closer, but 4 years later or a few years later, it's changing and getting back to normal, that you are losing your competitive advantage. So you always need to have different scenarios and see what's the best fit for the company. But I don't think that just because what's happened a month ago after tariff, a lot of companies are jumping and changing. For sure, owning the stock and having more stock on hand, that's a different story. And that's what we are always looking and playing with the stock, just to make sure that we are flexible enough. If something happening, we can serve the markets. Yeah.
And interesting there is especially the question, the word manufacturing, because a lot of companies are now playing with the difference between really manufacturing, producing, and assembly. For example, some companies in the US already now do. They received some car builders in the US. They got from the Trump administration, let's say, rebates if they can prove that they import spare parts as long as they assemble in the US. So they pay 25%, but they get a rebate of 15 to 20% on the spare parts if they assemble. But assemble and production is still not the same. And that's a big...
You see it with China as well. Now you see Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia are typically subcontractors for China. And you see lots of things are moving. Before there were many flights between China and Europe, many shipping lines as well. But you see that the freight, for instance, the air freight from Vietnam or Malaysia or Indonesia is really increasing double digit because of that, the split between manufacturing and assembly.
Yeah. Okay.
Apple is doing the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, interesting. I think we tackled the questions we have for now, but we will go back to the Q&A at the end of the webinar as well. Now, we've had already some concrete examples, but let's make it more practical, because what should companies and the viewers do differently as of tomorrow? Let's jump in some key takeaways. The first one is, for example, the world is more unstable than ever, and that changes everything. I come to you, Gergely. What is the most underestimated risk that you have faced or are facing and is influencing the international supply chain?
Yeah, as previously I just mentioned that the in-house knowledge, I believe it's very necessary since COVID, and also nowadays you need to have internal experts who are understanding the market. As I'm in a luck position, I'm a support of the Pharma.aero, and that's how I was introduced more to the airlines, ocean carriers and airports. So I also learned a lot to understand their needs, to understand how they're operating, and starting to collaborate, and also be educating each other and helping each other and building up something. And it's helping for the supply chain as well, because still in logistic and supply chain, if you know the right person, if you know where to go, if you know things, that's very important. And then you can also instruct your freight forwarders or carriers, okay, use this airport, use this airline because they are reliable. They will have enough space, or we can get a space. So I think that's one of the most important things. And there's the flexibility. As we talk about that, you also need to be adapt and change and be open to use different routings, different countries. So if you need to come to the Netherlands, you can land here to Brussels, and you can go to the Netherlands if that's the routing is better. And you need to check all the scenarios.
Yeah, and having the in-house knowledge, I'm guessing, is really key for a company to avoid being reactive and to fall into a mode of firefighting.
Indeed, as you mentioned, the strategic thinking and have already different scenarios and plan A, plan B.
Scenario plan.
Yeah. And also, what is also important, that the price, the shipping price and the transportation logistic price is always a key element. But we are not going for pennies. We are building up a strategic relationship with our suppliers, with our freight forwarders. We are working them over 10 years now. So it's very important that we have access to the senior leadership team. We can talk with them about strategic infrastructures or investments, and we build something together.
Yeah.
I think it's also a key element.
Next to agile, another keyword is really strategy and strategic planning. Yep. What are the parameters of strategic planning that weren't involved 5 years ago, but are now really relevant for supply chain?
Yeah, it goes a bit back to the earlier thing. How quick can you switch your supply chain? How quick can you plug and play? If you look to the whole supply chain, you have multiple modules there, like production, you have the supply chain, you have it's a bit like a puzzle. How quick can you take out a piece of the puzzle and put another one in? And that's all about also changing your behavior within the company, changing how, in the old days, typically you had in a company level, you had the CEO, the COO, the Chief Operating Officer, and supply chain was part of under the COO operations, but it's much more than that. Agile and resilient companies should think about having a chief supply chain officer. And that's things that are, I know, buzzwords, but it's changing the mind of how you look to it and how quick you can plug and play.
Yeah. Wouter, what do you think in your courses? How do you influence strategy in those courses?
Yeah, of course, in the course and on master level, strategy is absolutely crucial. We do not give them operational handle. We also talk about strategy. All the things that my colleagues here have discussed are there. We also do, of course, some company visits. We see senior leaders. We have guest lectures and all of that to link theory with practice. But indeed, all the things that my colleagues are saying are really happening. And we want students to see what is going on. We want to make sure that they have a critical mindset and they have the strategic viewpoint to be senior leaders later on.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go to the second takeaway. It's about sustainability, because the Green Deal forces company to think sustainable and also to introduce sustainable chains. Now, if they need to balance a trade-off between sustainability and geopolitics, they have a limited budget. What should they choose then, Roel?
Well, these days it's choosing is losing, Mm-hmm. No, the difficulties today are what you clearly see is that companies, if there is a cost reduction related to going for sustainability, and then we speak, for example, about making sure that you're not transporting air, that you're transporting complete full volumes. Then of course you will easily make sustainable decisions. But to be honest, if I see what's happening around in the world, yes, there is a risk that the sustainability topic is something which is higher in the priority list in European area and European companies than worldwide. And that's something where we should be aware of. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's good, it's something where we should be aware of. And that's a risk on the longer term, how to deal with that choosing between.
Yeah. So it is a worldwide company. Yeah. You are from Belgium. How do you see that tension?
We are in a privileged position because Veris is very strong in sustainability, and we are investing a lot in this area, and we want to be a pioneer as a animal health company and the industry. So in supply chain, we have several projects currently which are running. Some of the easiest one where we are investing HVO biofuel in Europe, which is a 90% CO2 emission reductions. But we have also a lot of initiatives where we are reducing or shipping packaging size because it's better for sustainability, but it's also giving us cost reduction. So at the moment, I think this year and the next year, we will still have a lot of projects where we have benefit in both ways. So benefit of giving sustainability, but also can have cost reduction and that kind of advantages. And up from there, we're going to budget, as we budget the biofuel as well. Every month or every year, we have a budget planning, and we will just add to the budget. It's a long-term vision, and it's a long-term goal for 2030 and 2050 as well. So we are not stopping, and we go ahead, and just because of this, we are not going to stop sustainability goals.
Yeah, because there is some low-hanging fruit, I'm guessing, in sustainability. What is the common mistake or the pitfall if you jump into like quick green fixes?
With quick green fixes is that I sometimes call them a bit like window dressing, that you do something through the outside, but on the long term, it's not helping at all. And in many cases, on the long term, it's even more polluting. Some of these quick fixes are some only for the show things. That's a risk that will always be there.
But I also think my position is also sourcing and sustainability. So we are combining all the tenders and all the procurement activities, and it's a requirement for there are a lot of sustainability requirements. So I think the bar is just getting higher and higher, and that's why there will be some minimum requirements from our suppliers and carriers. And if they are not with us, or if they are not able to provide or give that service, then we will not able to make a business. So at the end, it will be part of our life without question.
Yeah. Okay. The third takeaway is about agility. We've already mentioned it. It's the new efficiency, but what's the difference between just optimizing and becoming agile? Because we've heard some suggestions for optimization, but that's not the same thing as becoming agile. How do you keep that mindset within your company?
I think the digitalization is helping to have a full visibility and also able to do some scenario planning. It's very difficult to get a data. We also hired a lot of analysts. We have more data analysts or supply chain analysts than before because we have incredible amount of data what we need to able to collect and analyze and also clean up sometimes what we are getting. So, and analyze the data. We are also using Power BI with AI analytics as well. So to make sure that you know what are you doing and you have different scenarios and scenarios planning, and you do your best and adopt.
Yeah. Could you elaborate on optimization versus agility?
Yeah, optimization, if you look to it, optimization reflects a bit more like becoming more efficient. But as said earlier, it's now much more about effectivity, not only about optimizing and cutting costs and making it more lean. It's much more about making it more agile, making it more effective. If you say the product will be there on time, on that moment, in that quantity, make sure that it arrives there. So it's a bit different, a bit different mind.
And we are in a surviving mode. We are not talking about optimization. That's true.
Yeah,
it's less about calculating. It's more about plug and play nowadays.
Yeah. Okay, so we've had our 3 takeaways, and I see there are some extra questions from the audience as well. First one now is, how can companies strategically adapt their supply chain in response to rising tariffs or sudden trade policy changes? I hear a big sigh.
Yeah.
It's a question of a million, isn't it? I mean, many companies are a bit surprised, but let's be honest. Trump always said he would do that, so he is doing what he said. Economically, it doesn't make any sense what he's doing. Now I will not be allowed to enter US anymore, but. It's indeed companies should have already made a plan B and a plan C. So it's not such a big surprise. But what can companies do? Yeah, of course, they have to relook at their supply chain. They have to relook at their transfer pricing policies as well. They have to think about then more longer term reshoring, nearshoring certain activities. So,
I liked, for example, that one because indeed it depends on type of product. I mean, and even big companies like Audi and Jaguar Land Rover, for example, they decided even to temporarily stop all transportation export to the US. That's an extreme decision. But you have even some small and medium-sized companies, for example, there is a Belgian beer brewery that already adapted to it, and they started producing already a lot of Christmas beers, etc., already made months in advance, and they transported bunches of containers before the tariffs were implemented. I know not everybody has a crystal ball, but it's that kind of agility, playing a bit with your whole supply chain end to end. But of course, it's a one-shot solution because once the tariffs are there, next year, it's not a solution, but it are sometimes that kind of agile decisions that can make differences. But there is not one. I mean, if the one that can answer that question is probably can buy a lot of houses at the back.
Maybe it's also trial and error. You don't have the crystal ball. You just have to
Yeah, but I think
small
what I
steps
mentioned
tried?
is too early because there's still a lot of deal and negotiation ongoing, right?
Yeah.
So just to do something very quickly, for me, it doesn't really make sense. As we saw in the UK deal, that there are a lot of exceptions by both sides. So I think they will open up more in the other countries as well. Pharmaceuticals also, most of the time we are getting exceptions or lower tariffs. So it's a little bit too early for me to make any big decisions.
Yeah,
The companies should realize that the old status quo is finished, and sometimes we underestimate the power of Europe as well. We have 500 million consumers. We're the largest market in the world. If you look at the European Union with the countries around it, and the time that you have US and France and China and France, that's over. So it's clear these companies have to be prepared to a new world. You see the BRICS are coming up again with China and France. And there, what will be the position of the Middle East and India? It's also a question mark. But it's definitely time that companies stop thinking that we have put our wagon behind the United States. And I think many companies realize now, maybe in 4 years' time, if there's again a change in policy, we should be prepared because things can switch very fast.
And if agility is key, what could we expect from the European Union, as this is like not a very agile institution? What do you expect from them as for legislation with regard to tariffs, supply chain, etc.?
I think so far they have reacted quite wisely. They of course say we will retaliate. They retaliated on a number of products. They actually put that on hold for a while because they want to wait till the negotiations are finished. They're smart. They still have the stick and the carrot. So I think they will come up with a deal.
I think they will come up with a deal. But the biggest one is with China, and that's the hardest one. Be fair, they also have US and UK have a historically good relationship. The US has a surplus, trade surplus, so it was an easy deal. We will see how the other countries are making these deals, but the most difficult one definitely is China, and that's where we're all waiting for, and that's the biggest influence in the market, and also the pricing.
Yeah,
but Europe could play an in-between role between the China and France and the US, and then the few friends they have left. So I'm quite positive for the role of Europe, and as long as we stick together. I know that's a challenge. We have always countries who have other opinions and all of that. Yeah, your country. Indeed, not only Hungary, but also a few other countries recently. So, but you still see that Europe is a strong institution. It's not the most agile, but they have some smart people there. And we must be so happy in Belgium that we're part of the European Union.
Yes, of the bigger communion. Yeah. Another question, what skills do you see as essential for future supply chain leaders in navigating pressure and uncertainty?
Critical minds and analytical minds. And that's what we see with our students, isn't it, Roel? Some students are missing this critical mind. Some students are missing the analytical mind.
But thanks to AMS.
Yeah, we try. We try
insights.
We try hard, and that's, for me, these are two important skills because the status quo will never come back, and there will always things are happening, and then you need to be critical and analytical to move forward.
Yeah, and when I'm introducing a lecture here at Antwerp Management School, my second or third slide is always. If I speak about what you should know for the course, one of the most important slides is look around what you see, because in the old days, supply chain was, to be honest, following the book and the guidelines of just in time, and everybody was happy, saying it shortly. Today, I mean, you should be aware what's happening worldwide, geopolitics, who is friends with who, that kind of things. Look to it in a critical way and try to already estimate what will be the impact. Stupid example, last week, there was an electricity shortage in Spain, in Portugal. I leave in the middle if it's geopolitical or not. But by then, a good supply chain manager already knows that potentially some melons and some other products coming from Spain will be in these weeks, the next coming days, in shortage at supermarkets because cold chain was broken and the whole thing was under pressure. That mindset, looking critically to that kind of things, that's our future of supply chain leaders.
Do you see it also in your team? What kind of skills do you expect from
Yeah,
the
indeed.
members of your team?
So the knowledge, the agility, but also investing technology, what I mentioned, to make sure that you invest continuously for technology to understand, because it's so much data, so much analytics you need to see your whole supply chain, and also the visibility. Because you have all the visibility and the tools, then it's much easier to adopt and much easier to change, because then you will see exactly the bottlenecks. We are shipping over 20,000 shipments per year, only internationally, but if we are shipping, talking about small pack or local distribution in the only in the US, we are shipping over 1 million small pack per year. So just to follow up, it's very difficult. So you need to analyze your own data and make investment in this area.
Yeah. We have time for just one last question from the audience. It's a long question. The skills gap in supply chain is well known, especially when it comes to fostering strategic thinking in students early on. But what role can learning institutions such as AMS play not just at master level, but already from the start of bachelor education? And how do you see the value of experiential, game-based learning in this context? That's a nice one, because students, before they come to IMS, they are in the system. What could we expect from?
Of course, let's be honest. I mean, bachelor and master level are two different levels. Now, in the bachelor, we try to let them gain knowledge and have a wider view on the world. We try to have some analytical and some critical thinking as well. That's getting there step by step. But strategic thinking on bachelor level is quite difficult. That's one of the things we're doing here more at AMS or at University of Antwerp at master level. So it's really a step-by-step approach, but there are certain case studies they have to discuss where they have to apply certain strategic skills. But on the other side, you first need the basics right, knowledge-wise, and the basics right, analytically and critically wise.
Yeah, you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw the game-based lectures. Indeed, both at we also lecture at University of Antwerp, for example, as well there in bachelor's, masters, and here we try at least to have on all levels at least some kind of applications as well. Sometimes with business games, etc. But like Wouter says, I mean, master, and especially the masters of Antwerp Management School, they go, I mean, next level in strategy, in applying.
But business games we're using, students absolutely love it. It's the gaming generation, and sometimes it's also computer based. So we use it in our lectures. It's more towards the end because we first build up knowledge, and then in the end we play a business game, and it really helps to assess all the different skills.
But I also think what we need to discuss maybe after this session, how our companies can work together, because it would be beneficial for both parties that we have young talents from you guys, but you also have visibility about how pharma industry is doing and how we do it in the real life, so they can have some realized experience. So I think the cooperation between EMS and Zoetis would be very good.
Collaboration in the making.
Absolutely.
It's on tape.
Yes.
My very last question to each one of you: if you would meet a supply chain leader today, what would be your one strategic advice to him or her? Roel.
Take into account that supply chains in the future will be more agile, resilient, potentially a bit shorter, but more expensive.
Okay.
Invest internal knowledge and digitalization, as I mentioned, and be ready for everything.
All right.
Plus your seatbelts almost. For me, it's think about insourcing your knowledge. You talk about knowledge, but maybe certain activities you can also insource. The time that supply chain manager department is run by only one person is finished. You need to not only have the knowledge, and sometimes you can gain knowledge as well by insourcing certain activities. You do not need to outsource everything. So my piece of advice is think about insourcing knowledge or maybe certain activities for the supply chain. You might need it later on.
Okay. Thank you for the expertise, Roel, Gergely, and Wouter. What became clear today is that the world is not temporarily unstable. It has changed structurally. We can't keep optimizing with outdated models. The future demands fundamental choices, robust and resilient chains, and leaders who dare to pivot before the system breaks. We've seen how geopolitics, sustainability, and strategy are now all supply chain teams. And we've seen that those who invest in resilience and sustainability today will make the difference tomorrow. Once again, thanks to the experts here and to you, our viewers, for your time and engagement. But if you want to take this further, there are ample opportunities. Check out the masterclasses and executive programs at Antwerp Management School at ams.ac.be. You'll soon receive a follow-up email with the recording, additional resources, and the opportunity to get your extra questions across. Stay curious, keep thinking ahead, and see you at the next AMS webinar.